So today, I'm taking the day off again. I have these M3 convertible stock springs that I'm gonna try to put back in this car. Not back in. I bought this car lowered with these H&Rs, and I'm not really a fan. So that's the plan. And then if I have time, I'll probably try to change the muffler out on the red M3. But first things first, I gotta move the red M and the Ferrari. Can you tell I just had these two things detailed? Don't they look good? This one I just had buffed by a friend of mine who owed me. This one I actually had a two-stage paint correction done on. So I'm nervous to even have it outside, and I have to have my buddy John help me wash it because I don't know what the hell I'm doing with nice cars. So they ruined my nice roundel though. That's kind of a bummer. Gonna get a bit tricky. Move both the cars. I gotta pull this one behind the R8 and then pull the Ferrari behind the Golf R. I think I gotta set the camera down, so I'll come back to it. No power steering is a little tough. Great success. That is a pretty car.
Pause it.
Doesn't usually stay like that. I don't know what's going on. I have a bad plug wire or something. You hear that little miss, it sounds like it's only running on 7 cylinders right now. Huh, I don't know. I'm gonna do plugs and wires and all that when I do the engine out service, so hopefully find out what the problem is. Now, it's time for that thing. Into the beater. I've been hypermiling, can't you tell? Hopefully I fit. It's gonna be a little bit tight. This is kind of scary. I gotta get out and see how close that actually is. be okay, but I don't like that. Oh shoot, this thing's got wide hips. We made it. All right. Never-ending fun time. Well, it's inside and on the lift. I was just realizing how corded these tires are getting now. I allegedly did some burnouts with this thing last night on a closed cul-de-sac in Mexico. So just trying to get rid of these terrible old tires so I can get some new stuff on there. But they're dying hard. They do not want to give up. So there we go. Stock M3 convertible springs. This thing's got wheel locks now because I put them on there. Got to deal with that stuff. Just gonna go ahead and rip the wheels off of it. There you go. And start looking at what we have to deal with here. It shouldn't be too bad. I've got a nice spring compressor over there. It's just that little squeeze collar on the bottom of the knuckle on these things sometimes doesn't cooperate. I'm holding out some hope because it's a California car, but we will just have to see. So wheels and tires are off. They are corded inside and out. Here's our H&R springs, nice and blue. It's usually pretty easy to go from regular springs to lower springs because they usually don't need quite as much compression, but I don't think I've ever gone the opposite way and put factory springs back in a car, so this will be an interesting learning experience. But on the rears, you basically just drop the rear shock bolt out of it so you can get a little more wiggle room, then get a pry bar. Rear springs are really quick. Fronts are a little tougher. Undo the sway bar end link, get these two little electrical connectors out of the back, and there's a giant through bolt on the back of this collar, which you can sort of see, it's right there. Zip that thing out, and then you have to take a pry bar and actually jam the collar apart, and then the knuckle will actually fall down enough where you can get the strut out. Then you take the 313 mils off the top, take the whole assembly out, compress the spring on the strut, and then you can put the factory spring back on it with a compressor and then shove it back in. So I anticipate the fronts are probably going to take a couple hours and the rears will probably take about a half hour. So I don't know which one I'll start with yet, but I'll try to keep you guys apprised on the progress, and then hopefully I like how it looks a little bit better on stock springs. Not that it's a bad looking car lowered, it's just it's really impractical with how low it is. So. Yep, I'll hop to it. So there you can see that collar that you have to pry apart. This car, it was unusually easy. I just kind of jammed the pry bar down from underneath right here, and I just wiggled it back and forth while pushing down on the brake rotor with my hand, and it popped loose. So the end link nut is a 16, but the holder block on the actual end link is a 17 on mine anyway. So this thing right here is a 17, that's a 16. Popped right out on this side too. If you have xenon adaptive headlights, there's a sensor on the other side. You're gonna want to unbolt that first, otherwise you'll break it like I did. I don't especially care because these don't adaptive anymore. I don't really know how to say that properly, but adapt, I guess. At this point, I'm just going to drop it back down, take the 313 mils out of the top mount, and then rip the front uprights out of it. If your car's an M3, it should have a strut bar. Mine didn't have it when I bought it, so this is what you see. That's all there is holding the top of it in. Once you undo those, it will fall out the bottom, so make sure you're holding the coil spring with your other hand. So those are our front uprights. factory offset top mounts. And I was actually noticing that the M3 has slotted tops. So I'm actually, when I put them back in, I'm gonna dial them all the way back and hopefully give myself a degree of camber. So there she is. I'm actually gonna go to the back now with my 18 mil, zip that shock bolt out and get the rear springs out, just to kind of get it all in one spot to show you guys first. So rear shock bolt is out. A little bit of movement in there. I'm just going to take my pry bar. I guess you work your way from the bottom on these springs. There is a way to just lever it down. I cannot remember. Well, either way, the spring is, sorry for the very awesome video quality. Spring is out. Transfer the rubber uppers and lowers to your factory springs. Or if you're lowering your car, unlike me, transfer them from your factory springs to your lowering springs. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side here, and I'll put it all in front of the car. So there we have it, the full lowered setup. And gosh, and that's what we're working with. Pretty heavy duty springs on the convertible. A lot of junk in the trunk. Although literally right now, actually, I've got a differential. A buddy of mine's coming by to pick it up. Bam. So next step for me is probably put in the original rear springs, and then I'll kind of go over what's going on with the fronts when I put them back together with the stock springs. To put the rears in, put the top spring pad in first. After you're done with that, just get your pry bar in there and start wiggling it around until it sets, and then eventually you're gonna have to, if you have a lift, use a trans jack or something to jack up that corner of the car so you can get the bolt in. Otherwise, you're gonna have to set it on the ground or on some 2x4s and then let the car down a little bit. Be very careful and get the bolt back in that way. The front's a little bit easier, or not easier, but more straightforward. So again, I'm going to do the rears first, but you can go whatever order you please. So the rears are in, except for the rear shock bolts, which again I have to do a little bit later for multiple reasons. So at this point, going back over to the front, there's a couple different ways you can take apart strut assembly, especially with a lowering spring. There's not a whole lot of tension in the uncompressed state on one of these things, so what I'm going to do, and I'm not ever going to recommend you do it because it's dangerous, just take an impact and zip that thing off and make sure whatever that's pointing at is not important. So I'm going to flip it around in this case and just let it pop. Putting it back together, you need a spring compressor either way, unless you want to be dangerous and you're lowering your car. Then there's other janky ways to do it, but I'm just going to zip that bad boy off, take the spring off, and then putting it on, I'll show you my spring compressor and how it works. So yeah, don't do this, but if you do, moves around a little more than I'm used to. Hold on a second, I'm going to put it between a couple of tires. Well, that's odd. It's actually spinning the shaft, which means the shock's a little bit worn. So I'm going to do another no-no. I'm going to pull down the boot a little bit, or up here I guess. Find the highest point you can and get a vice grip and gently put it on there. The reason why I don't go further down is because if you actually mar the shaft, it's just going to eat the seals on the shock. But if you go all the way up here, you're very, very rarely actually driving on the shock up there. So another moment where I have to set the camera down, unfortunately, I think. Let me see if I'm good enough to do this. I guess I got it. Okay, that wasn't very exciting. Like I said, lowering springs, not a lot of compressed energy because they're much shorter than a stock spring like that. If you're doing this trick with a stock spring, it's gonna give you a good thunk as it pops. But there, she's taken apart, so I'm gonna get the spring off of there. I'll get the whole thing kind of assembled with the new spring, and then I'll dig out the spring compressor here. So there's the almost fully assembled upright. Spring's actually a little bit tricky to get right on this. I wasn't sure for a long time if I had it upside down or not. I think before I put this one fully together, I'm actually going to take that one apart just to make sure the springs aren't, aren't directional. They usually are not. Yeah, that even just says front on it, so maybe I won't. I'll get the spring compressor out now. Right. This tool is just basically a copy of the Schwaben compressor, although I think it's a little bit better. We're gonna need the biggest forks for this one. So, get those out first. This is the actual compression mechanism here. And then the bolts that hold all that together. I'm gonna assemble this real quick, lay that thing back down, and then show you how it works. It's very slick. So there it is. This thing's just got a big screw inside of it. And all you do is turn the end of this thing with your socket. It slowly starts compressing the spring. I mean, it's pretty easy unless you're doing a really beefy spring. So I'm gonna give it, I don't know, 25, 30 turns. And then I'll set it all back upright. And the moment I see the top stud sticking back through the top of the strut mount, I'll throw that washer on it. I'll thread the nut on, then I'll hit it with the impact. Easy peasy. It was literally about 30 turns on that. Still super easy. I got it threaded on with the washer. Now I'm just gonna zip it with the impact, and she should be ready to decompress, and we'll do the next one. There she is, completely assembled, ready to pop back in. I don't actually remember what side this is. I'm gonna assume left side. They only go in one way, so I think since that one's on the right side of the car, I'm pretty dumb. That's all there is. So I'm just gonna do the same thing on this one now. I'm not gonna take video of it just to speed up my process a little bit, but you guys know exactly how I do it at least. Yeah, fun. All right, they're both back together. Whew, it's gonna be fun. So in this car, my game plan is one by one, pop them up in, thread on the little 13s on the top so they're hanging, get them centered in the collar, and then once I have both of them centered in the collar, I'm probably gonna get a jack underneath it or a hammer. I'll see which one works better. Wiggle it back up into place, put the set bolt in, and then we're done. I guess end links too. But it's, I mean, you guys watch me more or less take them out. It's the same process. It's just a lot of hitting shit, and I don't know. It is what it is. But I'll be happy to see this thing set down with stock springs on it. Very, very excited.